My name is JT Van Zant. I'm a fly fishing guide on the Gulf Coast of Texas. Being on the water has always been the secret to unlocking my soul. I just feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this life. And that feeling inspires deep thought and conversations with my clients, who are all of varied backgrounds. I truly enjoy sharing perspective on the human experience with folks I take fishing. Drifting, a YETI Presents podcast, was created with the goal of capturing those candid conversations with people who inspire me and sharing them with an audience that has the same sort of restlessness and curiosity that I do. I have found that the best way to provide wisdom and hope for future generations is to learn from the folks that have blazed the trail before us and have made tough decisions in the pursuit of living an extraordinary life. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening to Drifting. Our guest on this episode of Drifting is Oliver White. Since this conversation was recorded, Hurricane Dorian devastated parts of the Bahamas, and none was worse hit than the island of Abaco. This is critical to mention because a portion of my interview with Oliver pertains to Abaco pre-storm. Oliver's wife Beth was born and raised on Abaco, and her family still lives there. Abaco Lodge, built and run by Oliver, was totally destroyed, along with all of Marsh Harbor. The Bahamian people possess the happiest and most welcoming spirit of any place I've ever visited, and the staff of Abaco Lodge has become extended family to me. Oliver set up a GoFundMe site to benefit his staff, and the support shown thus far from our community has been terrific. As you listen to this episode, please keep our Bahamian friends in your hearts and minds, as our support of their community will be needed for the years to come. Let's talk about, there's so many places and so many things to talk about with you, Oliver. It's mind-blowing, honestly. For someone who's spent 28 years fly fishing and credits that lifestyle for saving me and making me happy and giving me the exact thing I was meant to do. I've traveled, but it's not even worth mentioning where I've been in comparison to what you've done. Let's talk about Guyana and the Arapaima and the Makushi Indians. How did that come about? How did you choose that place?
Really, a lot of my life as we go through this, it has been very just serendipitous, right? It wasn't that I went and sought out much of any of these things that I do. It was really just being presented opportunities that I kind of maximize the value of. And the Guyana project was very much that. I was still living in the Bahamas. I mean, I had my entire life savings invested in this project. I was, helping make it successful, help making a name for myself in the industry and doing all of these things. And we had just filmed Pirates of the Flats. It was the first year that had happened. And it was on ESPN. And so Michael Keaton and Tom Brokaw and Lefty Kreh, all these guys came to the lodge, right? And I met all these guys and we were doing this series for ESPN, which was, all just great experience. And one of the guys I met during that was the VP of marketing at Costa Sunglasses, Al Perkinson, because they were a big sponsor of that show. And we hit it off and I took him out and pulled him around to catch his first bonefish and, just kind of became friendly.
Can I back up right there? So how did you get those guys to come? What was the lure for the best in the business to show up and fish with you?
And honestly, it was, there's such a great backstory there. So I bought the property in 2008 in the Bahamas. And technically you are not allowed as a foreigner to own a business in the Bahamas. You have to have a majority Bahamian partner. But
or even guide there, right?
You do anything. Yeah. I mean, you can go buy a home and, retire on vacation there, but you can't go and do a commercially viable deal. And, but you can apply to what's called the Foreign Investment Board and demonstrate that you have a unique talent and you're going to add value and ultimately create jobs is what they care about. How much you're going to invest and how many jobs you're going to create. And you can get an exemption to that. So I had bought the property and you have to put up the money in an escrow as you're waiting for this approval. And I had just left my job in New York. It's 2008. I have my entire life savings invested and it's tied up in escrow and the world is ending, right? The stock market is crashing. And I'm like, buying into a real estate pipe dream in the Bahamas. This is not a good call. And I'm actually praying that
Luxury items are the first to go.
yeah,
right?
that the whole thing gets shot down, right? The government just says, no, you don't have the skills, you're out. And I'd get to walk away. And that didn't happen. And so in October of 2008, I moved to the Bahamas to start this project. And the property I bought had some buildings on it, but it was completely in disrepair. It had been destroyed in a hurricane, and there were walls missing and floors missing, and part of it had been rebuilt as apartments. And so I went down there really to manage this construction project to rebuild. And so I'm down there, and the idea was I'm going to take a whole year, do the construction. We're going to open up in the fall of 2009. And I thought that was, lofty, but doable. And that's kind of the natural cycle of the season in the Bahamas.
You had to be there. You had to be hands-on, or
Yeah.
it wasn't going to happen, right? You were like,
yeah, no, it had
on
to be,
site
you have
the
to,
whole time.
yeah, you have to touch everything
Yeah.
to make it happen. And so
sand flea infestation, the whole sleeping in tents, or what was your accommodation while you built the lodge?
no, I lived on site. So one of the buildings they had renovated into a new apartment. So it was there. And we're going to get so sidetracked because there's so many tangential experiences
okay.
of this deal.
Hang with us, people.
When I bought this place, the deal was from the former owners that all the electricity worked and all the water worked. And that's part of closing. And so I got there, moved there. It's my first night. Half the building wouldn't turn on power-wise. And so I call the owners. I'm like, hey, I've got an electrical problem. They're like, no problem. We're going to send out an electrician. I was like, okay, great. So I'm there. I've literally been in the Bahamas for 36 hours. And this electrician comes. I'm telling him what happened. And it's like, it works over here. It doesn't work here. None of the breakers are tripped. Just basic. I don't know much, right? But that's what I knew.
I don't want to touch it.
Yeah. And so he goes to this breaker box. He's got this giant screwdriver. And he starts poking around. I was like, that's hot. He's like, I know. And just, man, sparks fly. And the guy gets shot across the room into the wall. And I'm like, man, I have been here for less than 2 days and I have a dead guy in my house. I was like,
Is he dead?
And so I walk over there and he gets up and shakes it off. And I was like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, that happens every now and then. I'm like, it really shouldn't. So that was my introduction to the Bahamas and construction for that matter. So I had to learn quickly.
With gas.
Yeah. And then now we're good. So you really had to be there all the time. And not that I knew anything, but I kind of consider myself a big, able to be a good decision maker, right? To at least process through the information and do the best that I can with the information available. And so it'd just be asking questions. And I found that, you needed someone there to help just kind of point the ship in the right direction.
This is your baby. I mean,
yeah,
had to go right.
And so anyway, man, I'd been in the Bahamas a couple months and the production company,
We're good.
so the production company who was trying to put the show together and figure out a venue, it was multifaceted. They actually called my partners in the deal because they had done other shows with them and said, hey, we're looking for a spot in the Bahamas. And then Bill Klein, who worked for Patagonia, called me because he lived in Jackson Hole and I was a guide in Jackson for several years. And Bill called and said, hey, I know you know the Bahamas well. We want to do this show. Where can we go? I was like, man, I have my own place. I'm here now. When do you want to film? He's like, April. I was like, well, I'll be ready. So come on. And then the other guy, so he was part of the talent of the show. And then the production side, we're talking to my partners and they all come back to the meeting to powwow and they all have this grand idea, this new place opening in Abaco. So it was a done deal. But I ramped up my timeline, which was already aggressive, from opening up in October to opening up in April. And, which was a terrible idea. So, but I was 28 and thought I was invincible, and so, that's
Came
how
down to the wire, but it opened up at least enough.
Yeah. So like
for a
literally,
soft opening with these guys.
no, 2 weeks before we were scheduled to film, they sent down like the producers and everything to scout, and they immediately left and got on the phone call and said, we're canceling the whole thing. There's no way this is going to be ready. And so we're on this big call. And I'm like, listen, man, it's going to be ready. They're like, no, we were just there. There's no way that this is going to be done. And I'm like, man, I promise it's going to be fine. And these guys who I knew, Bill in particular, said, man, if Oliver says it's going to be done, man, it'll be done. And so they showed up and they're backing down and unloading their equipment. And my brothers had flown in and my brothers are painting and I'm putting down sod and like the paint is literally wet and the sod is just freshly put down. But we were ready and we pulled it off and it was a great way to.
No risk, no gain.
That's right. And so, man, just throw it all out there. And it was a great way to launch a new lodge. And, the show was a huge success. And it helped make the lodge a huge success.
So was that before or after you got kidnapped?
Yeah. So in the interim, from agreeing to do this and the day that we were filming, in the interim of that, I got kidnapped, and that totally derailed us even further. Yeah. No.
You're sitting here. You're okay.
No, I'm like the only.
I know you had to tell this.
Yeah.
Man, but
This
share
is
with us
this is a
happened.
story I've shared, so it's okay. But I'm the only kidnapped victim there is in Abaco, so it's not like this is a normal thing. But it happened to me, and so we're in the middle of construction.
For those of you that are considering coming to Oliver's Lodge, no fear.
Yeah, it's all safe now. See you, baby.
Bye, Beth. Thanks for bringing Huckleberry.
So, I'm putting in these major hours to pull this thing off, right? I'm running 2 crews, it's daylight to dark, 7 days a week to pull this whole thing off. And so I had moved to the Bahamas in October, and I got kidnapped in February. So, I hadn't even been there very long, and I didn't really do very much because all I did was work, man. I went from the hardware store to the job site, and that was kind of my world.
Did you poke a fish in the interim one time?
I might have snuck in. I had a 16-foot Carolina skiff.
You had to know you were building a lodge on fertile ground.
Yeah.
Right?
You could catch bonefish off the dock right there. So, but yeah, the kidnapping, it's almost just surreal. And it is a story that I have to tell so often anymore that it's just has kind of become part of. It's almost not like it didn't even happen anymore.
It's in the fabric now, but it's unbelievable.
And it was a Saturday, and my crew had just gotten off work, so it was around 5:00, and the sun's starting to go down, and I was washing dishes, and so I'm standing there at the sink, and I see out the window, and there's a guy standing there, and just me being me, I just go right outside, walk around. Hey man, what's going on? What can I do for you? And he's like, I'm looking for work. I'm like, well, I'm not hiring anybody. It's a giant construction site, right? There's tons of work going on, obviously. And he's like, but I'm a roofer and I'm a painter and I can do all these things. And he starts wandering into the property, and which was just weird, right? Something was just wrong. It wasn't, he wasn't aggressive. It was just strange. Something wasn't clicking. And as you can imagine, the islands are relatively narrow, so the road goes down the middle. So you pull in the driveway, and I would argue that that's the back of the property, and then as you continue on, you get to the waterfront, right? So he's walking towards the water, so like towards what I consider the front. That's what I like to be the front of the house. I like to look at the water coming in from the roadside. I'm literally just following the guy, walking behind him, just being like, what is going on here? And my phone rings, and I just totally ignore him. I just jump on the phone call. I'm in work mode, right? So I'm solving problems. I'm on the phone, talking, just ignore him. I hang up my phone call, and I turn around, and the guy's got a machete at my neck, and he's like, listen, you don't understand. He's like, I need money, and I need it right now. And not that I'm a big guy, right? But he was a muscular guy, but he was a lot smaller than I was. So I just kind of, put a little space between us, and kind of amazing. It really wasn't even that scary at that time. And I just said, yeah, listen, man, I got a little bit of money in the house.
Is this another obstacle to be ready by April?
Yeah, we're going to be fine. And so, I just turn around and I just start walking towards the house. And the guy's like jabbing me with this machete, like just poking me in the back. And so, I put a little step between us, and man, I just take off. I just didn't even think about it. I just took off. And even now, man, I flew down here to Austin, Texas, man, the keys are in my truck. And 99 times out of 100, man, the keys are in my truck. Yeah. So, man, I go and jump in my truck. It's a Chevy Blazer, actually. And I go and I turn the key, and the keys are in my pocket, right? So I'm in the front seat, and I'm trying to get these keys out of my pocket. And all the windows are down because there's no AC. It's the Bahamas, right? The guy jumps in the back seat behind me, hits me in the back of the head with the machete. We get out, we kind of get in a little scuffle. And, he's like, if you don't stop, I'm going to kill you. I was like, all right. So I was like, I'm good with that.
Just one didn't work.
Yeah. So, all right. So, yeah. So we stopped there. I kind of give the guy my wallet, and he ties me up to the front porch of my house. And so my hands are tied and my feet are tied, and I'm tethered to the railing of the porch. And he's in the house fumbling around looking for stuff. And I swear to God, I'm standing outside and I'm laughing out loud. I'm like, I cannot believe this is fucking happening. Right? I was like, you've got to be kidding me. right? This is so you. I mean, truly not concerned. I mean, I'm like just annoyed, right? I cannot believe this is happening, right? And seriously, I mean, and so we do all this stuff, and I'm just kind of waiting for it to be over so I can get back to my agenda. And the guy comes outside and he just sucker punches me, and he's like, where is the safe? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, where's the safe? I was like, there is no safe. He's like, where's all the money? I was like, man, I've got $200, right? You've got my wallet. That's all I have here. And he goes back in the house and he starts looking for this safe that doesn't exist.
And your face is stinging because he punched you in the face.
It's stomach actually, but yeah.
Still, now there's rage.
Yeah. So now it's just like it got a little more real, just like that. And that happened again, right? He came back out and hit me again. And he's like, man, where's the safe? I'm like, man, there is no safe. And the perspective was as simple as, man, here's a white guy, a foreigner, doing this huge project. He's got to have a safe full of money in here somewhere. And it's like, man, there's nothing here. It's at the bank. And so he goes through my whole house and, steals all the, cameras and iPods and, just bullshit that's laying around. And comes back out. He's like, man, I'm taking you with me. I'm like, whoa, man. No, we're not doing any of that. I was like, you've got my wallet. You have my phone. I'm tied up to my house. You have the keys to my car, right? I think we're good. And I lose that battle. I end up in the back of this Chevy Blazer. It's dark by now. And we're driving, and but I'm sitting up in the back, and my hands are tied, my feet are tied, and I'm talking to the guy the whole time. He can't drive. He's all over the road, man, just off the road, and I'm sitting here trying to get untied, and he figures that out, and so he pulls off the road, roughs me up a little bit more, and cuts out all the seatbelts in the car, and hog ties me in the back. So now I'm like properly tied up. It went from like I was gonna be able to go and do that and have an option to now I am hog-tied, laying flat on the back, definitely not getting away. And, again, man, I'd only been on the island a couple months. I didn't really know my way around. And when you leave the lodge to go to town, you take a right. I'd never even taken a left, right? And we went left. And so, we're going to no man's land as far as I'm concerned. And we drove for what felt like forever. And he just pulled off the road, turned the car off. Man, we're sitting there in the dark. He's like, listen, you don't understand. I need money. He's like, and I didn't even get a chance to answer him. He's like, I want you to write me a check. And it's like, sure, man, no problem. My checkbook's at the house, but I'd be happy to write you a check. And oh
my God.
And now that I have more intel, the guy was what they call a Haitian Bahamian. So there's a huge illegal Haitian immigrant problem in the Bahamas. They come and they do all the laborers like the Hispanics do here in the United States. And then they have children. But the problem is you cannot be a Bahamian unless your father's a Bahamian. And you can't be a Haitian unless you're born in Haiti. So you have these kids who grew up in the Bahamas and that's the only place they know, but they're ultimately citizens of nowhere. So they can't work legally. They can't go to Haiti. And they're just kind of lost. And that is a big part of the, and so it's a big part of the problem in a small nation like that. And that is what this kid was. And he was a young kid. I mean, he's like 17 or 18. And so we go back to the check conversation and he's like, well, how does the check work, right? How do I get the money? I mean, the guy has no idea like how the banking system works. No wonder he thinks I have a safe full of money, right? He's clueless. I was like, well, I write you the check and you take the check to the bank and the bank will give you the money. He's like, okay, I'm going to keep you until the bank gives me the money. I'm like, listen, man, it's Saturday, right? My crew's going to show up tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. You trashed my house, you stole my car, and I'm not there. I was like, this is an island. People are going to be looking for me. I was like, this is a terrible idea for you. So he's got my wallet. I'm like, listen, look at my wallet. And all of those cards, we can go to the ATM and I can get you a little bit of money off each one of those. And then we can call it good. And he kind of opens up my wallet and looks through. He's like, you're lying to me. This doesn't work here. I was like, man, it works everywhere in the world. I promise. I was like, you put it in, you type in the code, you get some money. And he's like, you're lying. And that was it, man. He got out of the car and then he put a t-shirt in the gas cap and lit it on fire with me still tied up in the back. So it went from bad to worse in a hurry. And And like full on, man, like, I'm in a blazer. So I'm laying in the back, man, there's flames burning in the window by my head.
Blazer.
Right. And it's just like, I'm like just waiting for the thing to explode. And, it's crazy, man. I'm hog tied. I can't kick the window because my hands are tied to my feet. I can't roll over the seat. There's nothing, right? It's just like full on panic meltdown. And it just goes out. Right, it really just goes out. Like it doesn't blow up like it does in the movies. Like there's flames and fire and panic, and then it just stops. And I'm like, yeah, just like that, man. Just deep breath, exhale. Like, oh my god, that didn't work.
You're more than slightly annoyed at this point.
Yeah. No. Now it's gone to like pure terror. Right, of I'm going to be able to talk my way out of this to holy shit, and then I think I'm free. And then, man, the back hatch swings open, and here's the guy, right? He just pulls me out and roughs me up a little bit more. He's kicking me, and and I look around, and we're in a construction site, they were pulling fill or something. There's a big backhoe, and he undoes the hog tie. My ankles and hands are still tied, and he hops me over to this backhoe, and he takes that seatbelt, and he makes a noose and puts me in this noose, and like made of a seatbelt noose. So I'm like standing on my toes, I'm in a noose, and I'm tied up, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go to the bank, and if you lied to me, I'm going to come back here and kill you. And I'm sitting here looking around, and I'm like, no problem, right? And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this.
Those things work half the time.
Yeah, well, whatever. I was like, man, if he leaves,
ATMs,
yeah,
right? Especially in a foreign country, it's like,
yeah, I just needed to be alone, right? I'm just like, I'm going to get out of something, right? I mean, I'm just like, if he leaves, I don't know.
The magnetic strip in upside down, and you're out of luck. Oh wow.
But I'm tied up, and I'm like, no problem, man. And I'm sitting here thinking how I'm going to undo this, right? How I'm going to unfuck this event. And and he walks back to the car, and then he walks back to check on me again. And then he does that a couple times, and he comes back and he takes me out of the noose. And he's like, I'm going to take you with me. I'm like, all right. And the one probably thing that I learned the most from this whole event is the power of drugs. And part of that is adrenaline. And when you think about what your body does when you get into a full defensive life preservation mode and the power of adrenaline, I can tell you every smell and my entire thought process and every color and it's like pure vivid. It's the most vivid memory that I probably could pull. And it felt like everything just slowed down, right? Your brain's firing and just, it's like, trying to solve a problem. But he undoes my feet and my hands are still tied up, and he puts me in the front seat of the car. And he's like, all right, we're going to town, which is like 45 minutes away, right? So we're driving, and I'm sitting in the front seat and I'm tied up, and I got this guy here, and I'm just like, all right, man, do I elbow the guy in the face, right? Do I open the car door and roll out? Do I just grab the wheel and crash and hope for the best? Or, and then just full process all of these things. And, the decision was we're going to placate this guy. And whenever we stop and get to town, that's going to be your opportunity to get away. And so we just talked, man. We talked religion. We talked about his mom. We talked about how bad his life was and what he needed the money for. And, he was young. And
sound like also you're just kind of a voice of reason this whole time.
Yeah, I just didn't want the guy to kill me, right? I mean, I just, whatever it takes, I'm going to get out of this. And that's the deal. And so we get all the way to town. And, I'm living in Abaco. So the third largest city in the Bahamas is in Abaco. It's called Marsh Harbor. That's where we are now. We're in Marsh Harbor. So it's the third largest city in the Bahamas. There's one stoplight, right? I mean, this city is a big overstatement. So we have one stoplight, and there's one main drag where all the businesses are. And that's where the bank is, of course. And we get there, and it's Junkanoo, which is like Bahamian Carnival. So it's like Mardi Gras. So there's a giant parade, and everyone on the island is there on this main drag, and there's people everywhere. You can't even drive to the bank because it's blocked off because it's this huge parade. And I go, and internally I'm just like, oh my God, man, this is it. I mean, because now we can't go to the bank. It's a bust. And he said something that will stay with me forever, which is all of these people think they're safe, but there's people like me watching them all the time. And he just goes right around the parade. And we come around the backside, and we park the car like a block and a half from the bank on the back. And he gets out, and he unties me, and he gives me my wallet back. He's like, I'm going to be behind you. And if you try to get away, I'm going to kill you. And then I'm going to kill your family. I said, all right. And I just walked towards the bank. And, the bank is here, and the parade is here, and we're coming from this side. I turn that corner, and I don't even look back, man. I just bolt straight into the parade, go against traffic, and just run nonstop. And that's how I got away. And so
He's still in jail?
he's still in jail.
Awaiting original trial still?
Last time we talked,
a couple years ago.
Yeah, so they caught him in 2009, right? And we had what was called a preliminary hearing, which is basically like a bail hearing. So they heard all the evidence. He wasn't given bail. And this is a significant enough crime that it has to go before the Supreme Court in the Bahamas, and we still haven't gone. Last year, they actually called me in January, said, hey, we have trial next week. Can you be here? I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out. And I think I shocked them, and then they just postponed it. And so we still haven't gone to trial. The guy's still sitting in jail.
God, I mean, is there, do you have to carry stress about whether or not he, like retribution? If he,
yeah.
You got a pretty good, I mean, no one died, so what's his likely sentence, would you guess?
They told me he would probably get 20, right? But he's done half of it before he even goes to trial. But it also goes back to just part of the problem of foreign countries, man.
Well, it's Christian's problem now, right?
Yeah. I'm not there anymore. But I mean, he's a Haitian Bahamian, and so they, as far as it works there, he has no rights.
And how about going from like sort of one of the safest places you could possibly be and encountering that situation, and you've traveled to places at this point that there's advisories not to go.
Yeah, including here in a couple of days. I head to Sudan.
Maybe you paid your dues and it's out of the way. Maybe it had happened for a greater purpose, or at least if it happened again, you've got experience in a hostage situation.
No, and I've gone and I'm somebody who believes in constant betterment too, right? So I went and learned a few things after that too.
Like jiu-jitsu?
No, I went and did some Krav Maga stuff, which is like Israeli special defenses. Okay. It's all about like completely debilitate someone as quickly as possible so you can get away, right? It's a lot of groins and ears and eye gouging and, yep. I mean, it's all brutal.
For the sake of the gun debate, if you had a gun somewhere,
yeah,
would that have helped you, or would that have been a detriment to your safety?
It would have helped. Yeah.
Would you be wearing it all the time in a place you had no fear?
So I live in America now, so I have no fear, right? But
if you were on the phone when he came to you with the machete to your back and surprised you, would you have been able to get that gun out of a concealment?
If you walk, I have walked through all of these things, and so part of the analysis for me in that exact situation was, you put your gun away. I have guns in my house now, and I have kids, right? So they're not out, and so it's okay. You want money? I have some money in the safe. Right. And at the top of my safe is a loaded gun. Right. And that would have been the situation where you would have had, potential to make it better.
So there's a scenario. I'll open it for you.
Yeah.
He's got a machete at your back.
Yeah.
And then it's whether or not you get it pointed at him before he can make the grab, right?
That's right. And you play the whole thing out, and
you read his inexperience. This was desperate. He was not necessarily a career kidnapper.
Yeah, I know he was a career criminal, but I think he just kept pushing the envelope. And I truly look back at the whole event, and he was hoping the car was going to blow up in my mind, right? And when I look at the whole thing and think about it, he realized somewhere along there he was way out of his league, and he didn't have the balls to kind of kill me, and that was the easy way out. And then it didn't work, and then he didn't know what to do. Right.
What a life experience, Oliver. Holy cow, man.
But, ultimately I look back from it, and
it's all part of the pro tour.
It's just a story now, right? It was an experience, and it was a story. And, I'm not necessarily traumatized. I view the world a little differently and probably a little less rosy, but ultimately, it's, wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
I know that there's some things you're uncomfortable with sort of being labeled as, but from a position of a professional fly fisherman with nearly 3 decades in the industry, I'm proud to say that you're potentially the preeminent personality to take over for the likes of Lee Wolf, Lefty Cray, our closest confidant, and a huge influence on my early development in fly fishing, Walker K. Chronicles, Flip Palette.
Yeah, mine as well.
The philosophical sort of connection you guys have. I looked up to those people. I needed their influence and guidance, and it was all VHS stuff, right? Back then. pre-social media, pre all of that. And I dicked around in bass creeks. And I went up to southern Colorado and I caught some trout. And I wandered down with Alvin to the coast and was successful on my first trip in catching like a 28-inch sea trout just randomly on a epoxy ultra shrimp that I never caught another fish on afterwards. But you have been to Guyana, Cuba, the Bahamas, the Seychelles, Tanzania, Kamchatka, Montana. That's a small portion of the list. You've caught bonefish, permit, redfish, trout, arapaima, tigerfish, vampire fish, tarpon, GTs, jacks of all sorts.
It's almost
That's
like
incredible.
a disease. Yeah.
That's incredible. And, I was talking to Jaco a little bit about this conscious decision I made, which wasn't hard because I didn't have any money to go anywhere. So ultimately, I've had this long, sustainable relationship with the Texas coast. And I know it intimately. And I guess to make things easier on myself in lieu of not being able to travel, I told myself that it was a decision to know a place intimately or to go and be a guided sort of fisherman who travels the world and gets a small piece of everything. But you've broken that mold. You have become intimate with some of the most remote portions of the world where you could go on your own, guide yourself in a dugout canoe to fishing from Bolivian rainforests to these rivers in Guyana to places in Africa. It's amazing. I get chills thinking about the cultural experiences you've had. And I think that the whole world, at least the world of sporting, would just glamorize and romanticize your experiences. But you've also had, I'm sure you've had every intestinal sort of disease that you can contract. You've had ciclotera from fish in the Bahamas. You've been affected by mosquito bites, by every biting spider. I mean, you've risked life and limb. It's not as easy as people think, and it's not as glamorous as people think. Guy Clark told me about songwriting. It's very romantic, but it's not any fun. I think on your end, you've pierced through some incredible journeys to discover some remote parts of the world. It has to just be and feel and give you the confidence of such an amazing
there's so much
life
in there
that you've lived. I mean, not to branch off on any of that. Well, let me just ask you the question. Where haven't you been and what haven't you caught?
The crazy thing is, as many places that I've seen and weird things that I've seen, the list only gets longer. Right. You start knocking things out and then you start looking for more and more obscure. And it's amazing still how big the world is and how remote certain things are, and that there are still places where you can go and to some degree be a modern explorer and a pioneer and do things. And there's a long list of places to go. And I'm getting ready to leave on a 5-6 week trip, and a big part of that is going to places that I wanted to go see and do that I haven't done. Or, I'm going to Oman and Sudan and Lesotho, and things that are not on the normal.
What are the fish there?
Yeah. So
what fish are you after?
So Oman, I'm looking for permit and a fish called a bream, which is kind of like a cross between a big drum and a snapper. I mean, I don't know much about them.
Shallow
they're
species?
on the flats.
Okay.
Yeah. But they also are deep water fish, but you can find them on the flats. So it's sight casting in this case. Lesotho is in the highlands of Africa. So it's a kingdom. So it's the highest kingdom in the world. It's a landlocked nation inside of South Africa, above 10,000 feet, but looking for trout and yellowfish. But we're going to take donkeys and hike in and camp and go explore. I'm doing that for Indy Fly.
Any threatening wildlife there?
No, I don't think so. And then I'm going to Sudan, which part of the product of the kidnapping is being very aware of where I'm going and setting up a contingency plan. So I was just doing a security debriefing with Global Rescue, who is a company that I use for all these things. And not only do they do medical evacuations, but they also have a security component. And so now, before I go on all these trips, I call and they have an expert for every country, and we talk about all the risk and how to get out and what to be aware of and things. So we just did this.
Very different than coming to your lodge in Bahamas.
Very much.
Or really pushing it and going to Cuba to a liveaboard situation.
Yeah.
Being a little bit sarcastic there, but no, you're going to places that most people, as perceived by Americans, their right mind would not take the risk to go.
Part of fly fishing for better or worse, right, without putting judgment on it, is this idea almost holier than thou, right, that you're going to do no harm and not kill any fish. I mean, God forbid you were to, whack a trout on the big hole or something, right?
Even though traditional flies are composed of parts of the most endangered, most exotic animals that ever.
I mean, we're not going to talk about the hypocrisy of all that quite yet, but there is this idea that you would never do that, and so as you start to travel, for me, the real connection was being torn as I would catch something and then have the local guy, bludgeon it and throw it in the back of the boat so that he could take it home. Where my natural desire was to let it go. And then, I also have a philosophy degree, right? So it's just, I always try to push that frame of thought. And it became really apparent to me that I was in the wrong, right? That, this is his world and, this is his life. And, it's an incredible luxury to be able to catch fish and just let them go. Right. And so that was the idea that
Jacques Cousteau thought that sport fishing was a perversion.
For sure.
Right.
And there's there's a real argument to be made there. Right. I mean, in many ways, it truly is for a sportsman, the greatest luxury in the world. Right. To spend all this time and money to go and fool something only to leave it there. Right. Embarrassed that you got it. So, and so, really just thinking about, what that meant for my passion and what I was doing and what it meant for these places that I was going. And the wanderlust hit me early. And, man, when I graduated college, I hitchhiked through Chile. I mean, I had no money, right? And, that was really, really the beginning. And meeting people along the way and just particularly local people in weird places, made me really rethink the perspective as an American angler of what was right and what we should be doing. And then also understanding that part of that is the luxury of not many people doing it, right? Part of the problem is you need good conservation as you get more participation and you have greater population density and all of those things. Conservation becomes really important because the places cannot exist in their wild state because ultimately they are really sustainable if you can keep them wild. And the connection for me was I really fundamentally believe that people protect what they love. And for me to be able to have an impact and protect the places that I love, I need more people to love them as well, right? I don't have the power alone to do it. So the value that I can do and create is to help create that passion among other people. And so early on, when I was guiding, 200 plus days a year, that was my ambition. Right? I want this to be fun, right? I want these people to love this as much as I love it because if they do, then there's hope for it to exist in the future. And for me, that was the shift for me in conservation.
Inspirational, Oliver.
So,
did the philosophy degree help in that?
Yeah, I think so. Right,
arriving at that determination for you.
The philosophy for me of everything I've ever studied, and there was a real argument to be made that was not a great use of my time. But of anything I've ever done, what it really teaches you to do is think, right? And the real value in the world today, I think, is solving problems.
Back up and look at what you're doing.
Yeah, just look, man. Just take in the information, decide what matters, decide what moves the needle, and figure out where you can change the dials.
Right. Most of our behavior is subconscious. We eat, sleep, shit, all out of our conscious thought. And there's just these occasions when we're enlightened by experience that we have the opportunity to back up and look at it.
And to look at yourself unbiased, right? And to realize all your own flaws and all the things that you've done wrong and to not hate yourself for it. That's for me, that's a big part of it is being able to look back and look at the things that you're ashamed of and look at the things that are not the good part of humanity and figure out where you can have a positive impact. And one of the things that really changed me was I spent many years guiding full time, right? I mean, that was how I was making a living and never thought I would do it forever, but man, I was enjoying my time. But I was at a trade show many years after that, after I'd had the Bahamas, right? I just started in the Bahamas and I was, trying to peddle business and do that, which I still do, man. Go give talks and do all of those things and, still very much a job. But I was at a trade show talking to this guy came up to me and he said, Oliver, you're not going to remember me. He said, but 10 years ago, you took me and my son fishing on our first fishing trip out in Jackson Hole. He said, and it was the most memorable day we've ever had, and we've been fly fishermen ever since. And we followed you and paid attention to everything you've done. And that, these are people that I met one time 10 years ago and never seen since, never spoken to since. And then now they had traveled and fished, as a father-son together that they, done now for a decade, by ultimately taking people outside and showing them something that I'm really excited about and trying to convey some of that passion. And
that's pay dirt, isn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't always happen, but it does
the same
enough.
As being a songwriter,
that's right.
And having someone come back to you and tell you how much that song meant to them.
Yeah, and those are kind of the magical things about what we do. And
that was never your goal.
No,
you were just following a passion. You had that effect
That's
on
right.
those individuals.
But then as you grow as a human, right, you also, I'm maturing along this way too, right? I'm not the same person I was 10 years or 20 years ago. And so you have your own evolution of who you are and what things mean and where you want to be. And those parts become more impactful.
I want to hug you right now, but I'll wait till the end of the interview. No, that's it, man. Yeah. That is it, right? Yeah. Like you stumble upon something you're interested in, you follow it upstream as far as you can take it, and then all of a sudden you gain respect for what you've done, or not, but you got to follow the passion.
But you hit a couple things in your intro there that are both very relevant. One is, the method of what I do as an angler, right? I mean, I've for better or worse, pigeonholed myself as this adventurer, that goes around the world, which I'm very, very, very happy with. But the people that I've learned the most from are the guys that have found a place that they decided to master, right? These guys that have become, the wizards of their domain, right? That intimate knowledge of your home thing. And the only way to really obtain that is to be there day in and day out, year after year. And now I still love to guide, and I'll go out west and I'll show up having not been there, and I'll guide, and man, I can do okay, right? I mean, I've got the knowledge, I've got the experience to pull from, but I'll never be as good as if I was there every day, year after year, or the guy that was. And it's a mix of, I think of fishing as every day you go, you file this away in the library. And as I've trained a lot of guides now, there's a few things that come from that. It's as you make decisions, people are like, well, why are you doing that? I'm like, well, honestly, 8 years ago, the conditions were similar. The moon was the same, the tide was the same, and this is what worked. And it's filed away in my brain, and I couldn't pull it from any other reason except that I'm living it again now, and your brain knows these things.
That's a fun catalog to have ownership of, isn't it?
Yeah, and the more time you put in, the bigger the catalog is, right? The bigger the library is, and the easier it is to kind of find the right answer. And one of the things that really demonstrated to me that it was all about that experience was the time that I spent guiding in Tierra del Fuego, where fundamentally the fishing there is pretty easy, right? You fished half a dozen different flies. One would work and work and work and work until it didn't. There'd be that day where there's a transformative shift in something, right? The fish changed and they were moved to something else.
Yeah.
And, there were 6 guides every day that would come out. And ultimately, everybody got to the right thing. The guy that had the best day is the guy that figured it out first, right? But you very seldom did only one guy or 2 guys figure it out. Usually everybody got to the right conclusion. And it was just, again, cycling through that experience. And the more time you spend, you make the decision to change something earlier.
It's not only that too, right? Like, so for instance, I didn't want to be a loser. I didn't want to just fish and have that be the only experience I ever obtained. But it was the only thing I really was fluent in. The more time I spent doing it, the more I knew, the more I started to rely on instinct and knowledge. I was lonely. And I started to tell myself, I'll never have a family. I'm never going to have children. I'm never going to share this feeling with anyone. If the right woman was out there and could see me now in my element in the middle of this fucking vast wilderness, she would love me for what I'm doing. But the comfort of her was never there. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
And there were some days when I would wake up in my tent and not have the energy to fish or even get out of the tent because I was so depressed and trying to find who it was I was supposed to be. But ultimately, there was nothing else to do but nourish yourself and then either keep sitting on a rock or make a cast for a cutthroat in a Wind River Lake or wherever it might be. and to push through those moments and to get back to happiness. 'Cause I don't stay down long, right?
Yeah.
I might be down for a minute, but I'm going to get back up and be on top real soon. Try to be.
No, I think.
And by continuing in that, then ultimately I just never saw it clearly. I truly wish I had. And it was a redundancy in what my father had done and all the questions he had had about being a songwriter. And I couldn't find the similarity. I couldn't see any sort of a path forward. But I got into woodworking. I made some money. I was able to buy a couple houses in Austin in the early days before prices were through the roof. And as I became sort of semi-successful in woodworking, my sights got turned back to fishing, and ultimately I came back to fishing, and now I'm guiding full-time, and I produced some resources for myself that made it easier to do what I loved, and it all has meaning now. And I met a woman I don't deserve and had two beautiful children that are just like the center of the universe. And you just got to believe in yourself. But the long road to that is that it's not always going to make sense. There's going to be some times where you doubt it heavily.
Sure.
And you're at the depths of your soul, and you climb out of it and you get stronger.
No, I actually, I don't know that you ever overcome it. My friends that know me well will tell you, man, I have a semi-annual existential crisis as I have this constant debate about what I do with my life and if it's the best use of my time and abilities, and, and it's, am I just being selfish? Is this just something I want to do? Should I be doing something else? Or, but there, that self-doubt for me is also what's always pushed me too, because it means I've never been complacent. And, we've talked before, and you brushed on it earlier, part of it for me too is, fly fishing was a very healing thing for me, right? And I also found it at a time in my life where things were very, very hard. And so it's been very personal and intimate for me personally, right? And I do, man, my happiest times fishing are by myself. And, the sharing it with others is partly an obligation and partly a means to make a living. But, if you gave me my druthers, I'd rather go hike in the winds by myself and play. And my fear is always that passion and that fire begins to fade a little bit as it, kind of takes over your life, because it certainly has taken over mine.
Yeah, and then, I think those personal struggles and getting through common struggles of humanity, pushing through that lonely time. And now I'm on top of the world, but there's this sort of major decline. You said something that really struck me, and it might not have occurred to you at the time when you said it, but everywhere is under threat. That's a
right.
quote from you.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm stronger. I'm confident. I know my ability. As long as those fish remain, I'm in good shape. But the truth is that now we're pushing through a decline in wild places. Right. It's magical to me where you've taken it and what you're doing with the sport, all the while enjoying yourself on the road and balancing life with family. It's super significant, Oliver.
We're working on the ladder.
I don't know if you feel like it was what you were meant to do, but for someone who's stayed in the same place and gained an intimate knowledge, I feel like you're a beacon out there, carrying it beyond the sport. Like I could care less about fly fishing other than it brings people to me that I can share the resource with and promote sustainability. You and I might know more than a scientist might know, right?
No doubt about
Parks
that.
and wildlife people there's some feds down at the Aransas Wildlife Refuge, and we put up signage recently because multiple sort of abuses by different user groups caused the shutdown of this accessible waterways through this incredible marsh called the Aransas Wildlife Refuge. Airboats and prop boats and scars and abuse of that resource has led the feds to shut it down entirely to everyone. And I view that as a gain. Now, I used to make part of my living, a good portion of it, a quarter of my days I could spend in the refuge. And now it's off limits. But I know when I pass those creeks that I see birds back in there hovering 4 feet over the water. I know those redfish are safe and unabused. And I'd have it that way. I've almost thought about it. And I think there was a trend at one point that was about to start where the hook just gets broken off. And all you're after is the take. Because honestly, I
Sure.
don't care about fighting a fucking fish. I love to see them get tricked,
Yeah.
right? And if they swallowed it and spit it right back out, I count him and move to the next, right? Tarpon fishing, you count the ones you don't boat, right? You had so many eats.
That's what it's about.
I don't really need to stick them anymore. I like to see other people start where I left off, and guide them into that experience. You're from Chapel Hill.
No, not originally.
No, so you're a military family.
Yes, I was born in Boone, North Carolina.
Okay.
In the western part of the
Talk
state.
about your early life for me.
Yeah, so my parents are pretty interesting. I mean, my father was the first one in his family to go to college. He, out of high school, volunteered to go to Vietnam at 17. His mom had to sign on. His older brother was there, and he just wanted to go. So, grew up very, very poor in a little town called Cleveland outside of Salisbury, North Carolina. So he volunteered, went to Vietnam, and then came back and used the GI Bill to go to college. He's still the only one in his family to have gone to school. And then he met my mom there in school and at Appalachian there in Boone, which is where my mom is from. And, they had me pretty young. And then my dad, after college, went back into the military as an officer. And so we started, what it means to be an Army brat and, moved all around. I mean, one of my brothers was born in Oklahoma. One was born in Germany. We lived in Maryland, lived in Georgia, but ultimately came back to North Carolina. And so I did middle school and high school there. And I went to college in Chapel Hill, which is, my
philosophy degree, right?
Yeah.
I was psychology.
And
Not too incredibly different. I had there was a philosophy teacher that I took a class from who his greatest thrill was to take on Christianity. And children in the class, children of, 18 to 20 years old, who bought it, hook, line, and sinker from their upbringing, and no fault in that. Like, I'm almost envious of people with unbreakable faith because they don't get rocked. They've got an avenue to explain off everything.
I wish I had that conviction.
Anything that challenges your faith is spelled out as such. All you got to do is believe in this thing that you can't prove, and you're safe from everything, right? Did you start guiding right after college?
During college. So, I was 19 and I had an accident. My father's not an angler, but like even as a young kid, I got into fishing. Like not fly fishing, but just fishing as a kid. I mean, I can remember running around with a cane pole and corn and catching horny heads, and everywhere we lived, catching bass, catching everything. And, as an early teenager, I started to dabble in fly fishing just totally independently. And when I was in college, I actually had just bought my first nice fly rod. And shortly after that, I was skiing in North Carolina. And I had a bad accident. I broke my back and my pelvis and my hip and my sacrum. And really, really debilitating.
Fucked yourself up.
Yeah. I mean, missed a whole year of school, have permanent nerve damage as a result. And
that's painful.
Yeah. But beyond the physical.
Nerve damage is.
Yeah. It's all that's strange.
Yeah.
But the emotional development that happened with that was what was the most important. And at 19, it helped put the world in perspective of what was important. And how that mattered for fly fishing is I was an active youth in general, and to be stuck in bed, at 19 and having gone away to college and have to come back home and live at your parents' house because you're physically incapable of taking care of yourself was a tough place to be. And I would go out in the yard. I was in a full back brace and a walker, right? And the only thing that I could really do is cast my fly rod. I would stand in the yard and just cast this little 7.5 foot 4-weight and try to hit the basketball, right? And no double haulings. I was still holding on to the walker, out there. And that kind of methodical.
I used a stool.
Yeah.
So I learned to double haul
sitting down
from the stool.
Yeah. If you can do sitting down, you're doing better.
But how about that, right? No, literally. I would watch the VHS tapes of Mel and Gary and Lefty, and then go out to the stool and try to replicate that. And I don't think I probably had a fly in the water day one if I wasn't injured.
Yeah.
But the it sort of was like the old school methods, like how Germany treats the trades, right? You can't be a roofer until you're a Meister. You can't replace a rafter until you've swept the shop floor for a decade, right?
Yeah.
That long course to being great at something that it seems omitted in our culture these days,
I think
like
that's
that
true.
instant grad. If I wasn't injured, I can guarantee I would still have. Well, not to say my cast is great, but it wouldn't be near what it was if I wasn't stuck on that stool for a good 6 months, immobile, practicing, getting it there with this ultimate goal of eventually getting better and being able to fly fish from that injury. Is that where you were at? Did you just
I actually didn't
treat
even
the cast as your own medicine? I never thought about it.
I didn't think about that, but I think that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really there's a beautiful methodical rhythm in casting. And, it was enough of a distraction to put me in a better place than I was. And it was a way to escape a little bit. And it was a way to kind of focus on being better and doing one thing well, right? And I think in general in life, if you can be more appreciative of these smaller moments, you'll be a happier person.
And you were acknowledging like your life was going to be different from there on forward.
Yeah.
And I imagine that fly line in the air was the only hope you had, that there was something you would have beyond that injury.
And really, as soon as I got better from that is, I went and got a job in Boone, which was the town I was born in, at the fly shop. And it was really driven, not because I wanted to work in a fly shop, man, but I was so into fishing, I just wanted to discount. I just wanted a bro deal, right?
That was me at the
That was it.
Angler.
I was like, dude, I don't care what you pay me. I just want a pro form, and I'm in, right? And so I was guiding, or I was in the fly shop, and it was this crazy little place, and they had, they were doing guiding and all this stuff. And one day a guide didn't show up, and the owner's like, man, you got to go guide. And I'm like, I've never been on a guided trip. I don't know anything. Right? I was like, I've never even been to the river that you're going to. He's like, well, you'll be fine. And I kind of got thrown into it, and and did well early. And so my last couple years of college, I would go up and guide all summer and come back and go to school. And I was paying my own way through school, and you can make pretty decent money guiding. Yeah. So, and I'd go up and guide on the weekends. My last semester, I did all my classes on Tuesday and Thursday, so I could have a 4-day guide weekend, and go and do that. And I never thought that this is something I would do professionally. And I always intended at the time actually to go be an attorney. I wanted to go to law school. That's partly why I have the philosophy degree. That was like the stepping stone to go and do that type of work. And I'd been doing an internship for the dean of the law school there at UNC. And, we started talking about applying to law school. And I said, I don't think I'm ready yet. So I'm going to take a year off, and I'm going to go guide. And then we'll revisit. And that quickly turned into several years. And it went from guiding in North Carolina, Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee. I got offered a job to go guide in Argentina. I was down in Argentina, and Carter Andrews was like, dude, you can't go back to North Carolina after guiding here. And he got me a job in Jackson Hole, having never been out west. So I flew back from Argentina to North Carolina, got my truck and boat, and drove across country to the west for the first time, and got to Jackson Hole, and there's the Tetons. And man, I started guiding out there, which I loved. And then I started doing that, and in between seasons, whatever money I'd saved, man, I went to Los Roques for a month and bummed around and just fished and just explored. And I always thought that it was a short-term deal, right? I always just knew that
at some point I'm going to have to get to work.
Yeah, I got to have to go get a real job. Yeah. But really, man, my last year guiding, I did like 275 days. At 25, 27, whatever it was, right? That's a lot of money. I was doing better than most of my friends I went to college with, and my life was pretty good. I was working really hard, but it was great. It wasn't really work.
So winters in Montana, summers in Tierra del Fuego. Is that how it was going?
So I was chasing the summer, right? So summer out in Wyoming, and then our winter going down to Tierra del Fuego, and then in between I'd go to the Bahamas and go do other stuff.
At some point in Tierra del Fuego, you had a pretty pivotal person in your life show up randomly.
That's right. And that was really, if you look back at my entire what I do now and who I am now and my ability to do the things that I do, it was really that moment, which I think I was, 24, 25, and really had no idea how important that was. But I was guiding at Cal Toppin, which has been named the best fishing lodge in the world, by the Robb Report. It's crazy, right? I mean, and particularly back then, it was the best that it had ever been. And so there was a huge waiting list to go, and the fishing was incredible. And when you think about trout fishing, you're catching brown trout there, but they go into the ocean. But genetically, they're the same trout that you have in Montana and Wyoming. And you go out there, you go to the Western United States and the average fish is 12 inches, and you go to Tierra del Fuego and that same fish, the average fish is 12 pounds. We stop measuring them and start weighing them because they're so big. And it's kind of one of the few trips in the world where you could promise somebody, like even today, right? If you go, I don't know what your fishing history is, but I promise you'll catch the biggest brown trout of your life. And there's very few places like that in the world.
See the sort of dilemma you have with going all around versus staying put. We could soothe each other there because my across the board accomplishments are very few. My accomplishments in a single area are
very
many,
deep.
But yeah, so God, I'd love to go, and I'm going to force that upon myself with my boys. At some
Absolutely.
Point. But
There's
tell
a balance
me more
there.
about that individual that showed up.
Yeah, so I was there guiding, and because of all these things, it was a destination where the people that came were experienced anglers. It doesn't make them good.
But in the back of your mind too, before this fella arrived, you were still questioning, like, what's it all going to turn into? What am I going to have?
Oh yeah,
to become,
no.
Right?
I knew there. I knew I needed an exit. Right.
You weren't set in like this is a sustainable career yet.
No. I was making a living and I loved what I did, and it was more of, man, I should go do something else, but I really like what I'm doing. Right, and that was the dilemma at the time. But I was there, and part of the nature of that place is the people that came were experienced anglers. Right, that doesn't make them good anglers, but people didn't just show up. Right, and then this guy showed up. Right, and he's got tags on everything. Everything is brand new. He's like, I've never been fishing. I'm like,
you used to have to string up a rod for somebody, but like unfolding waders from a box.
Yeah,
like,
just everything. Everything's brand new.
Oh boy.
Went so far as to say the only fish that I've ever seen alive was in an aquarium. Right, I mean, New Yorker to the core, and just not an outdoorsman. And he was at a charity auction. They told him this was the best in the world. He's like, I'm in. I'm going to try fly fishing. Let's go to the best in the world. And this was Bill Ackman. And this was in 2004, or January 2005, maybe. And it's a crazy thing because if you're in the financial space now, Bill Ackman is a little bit larger than life. But at that time, he was not quite the same superhuman that he is now. I mean, he had just folded his first hedge fund called Gotham Partners, and he actually launched Pershing Square that week when we were fishing together in Argentina, right? So he was just starting the second phase of his career, and he was a young guy. And I guided him for the week, because I like teaching, and I'm all for getting people and showing them their experiences. And so I guided him for the week, and we hit it off. And he was very inquisitive, not just on the fishing. He wanted really to understand the methodology of everything we did, right? And he's athletic, so he did well, and he caught a 20-pound brown trout, and he had a great time. But he was also just inquisitive on me and who I was, and what I was going to do in the world. And at the end of the week, he said, "Listen, you should come work for me." Right? He's like, "You would do great." And, here I am, a Southern kid from North Carolina and Tierra del Fuego with a philosophy degree, and I'm a ponytailed fishing guide and being offered a job to go work for a hedge fund in New York. I'd never been to New York. I didn't even know what a hedge fund was, right? I mean, I was way out of my league. And as you know, man, as a guide, you often get these hollow offers, right? And so I didn't really think that much of it.
There's a lot of talk on a guided trip that would seemingly link you to somebody forever.
Absolutely.
But you collect your check at the end of the day, they drive off, and it's over.
No.
Typically. That's some outstanding rum, by the way. Thanks for bringing it. From Guyana, no less.
So all of that is true, right? I mean, people, we'll do this and come do that, and it really doesn't mean very much. And you just kind of learn. But this one seemed a little different. But I finished my guide season there, and so I got back to Jackson Hole, which was home at the time, and I got back there in May.
What year was this?
2005.
Okay, so not the glory days of fly fishing. I would say that that's happening right now.
Yeah, probably. That's right.
In terms of its height.
Yeah,
right?
and particularly the destination thing. Like to be the obscure guiding internationally at that stage was not really real.
Right.
But I got back to Jackson Hole and there was a box at my house full of books and a letter or a note from Ackman. And she said, listen, you impressed me. Read these books and give me a call. Man, and I'm a pretty voracious reader. You know, my whole summer was booked, right? It wasn't like I was going to just fly to New York, right? But, I wasn't going to just take off and fly to New York. But so I called him and said, thank you for the books. And I guided all summer and I read the books. And, you know, you're in the boat all day with folks. And, you know, this
got to be some boring shit you read.
You would think, but actually, no, right? I mean, it was pretty interesting.
Numbers and me. Like,
yeah, but it wasn't numbers, right? I mean,
it
goes back. I mean, it was a philosophical viewpoint on how he invested. And the whole idea that the stock market is really just an opportunity to buy a company. And every day they give you a chance to buy the company at a different price. And it's your job to figure out how much the company's worth. Right. And so if you kind of relate that down to its most base thing, right? It's just like you play guitars, right? I mean, here's this guitar. Today I'll sell it to you for $1,000. Tomorrow it's $2,000. You pick and choose the moments where it's mispriced. And so it was really easy reading because it was pure philosophical and conceptual. But when you spend all this time in a boat with people, and at this stage of my guiding career, even though I was young, almost everyone I was guiding were people I knew. And so, hey, what's going on? Man, I'm reading, you know, The Intelligent Investor. You know, a lot of these guys are finance guys. They're like, what? And so then you give them the backstory and you're like, yeah, well, this guy I met in Argentina, he said I should come work for him and he mailed me all these books. And there was one of very few responses that I got all summer while I was guiding and reading finance in my free time. And it really kind of covers a big part of what I think my dilemma in life has been. And one was every chance those guys get, they walk away from what they do to spend their time with you, with what you're doing now.
That's always reaffirmed.
Right? Do you want to go do that? You know, and the difference is especially as someone who pulls a boat, right? The goal in retiring is only to move up the 14 feet to the front, right? And so you have to be able to make the money to pay. And the other was, man, you have to take that opportunity, right? How could you not take advantage, right? You know, part of it was I certainly didn't, which I know firmly now, was understand the value of that opportunity. And the third was a little more interesting and a little more conflicting in that it was, he's not a good guy. You shouldn't go work for him.
You didn't have any proof of that, but that was just sort of a hunch that it could be that way, or?
No, personally, I didn't have any of that. But part of what happened is if you, at that time in history, if you were to look up Bill Ackman, he had just shut down a fund in Gotham Partners. He had been investigated by the SEC, and there was reasonable evidence to think that he might not be such a great person. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, man, I just made a judgment call. Man, I spent a week with the guy, and that was it. Right? I didn't know him, but man, my instincts told me he was a good person and that he was the real deal. But man, I got the best education that you could have ever paid for, and I was getting paid along the way. I mean, I went and so I was part of the investment team. At that point, Pershing Square was still relatively small. I mean, there were 5 of us, including Bill and myself, and 3 other guys that were making all of the investment decisions. And I wasn't making any decisions, right? I didn't know anything, right? And I was the only one there who was not Ivy League educated. I was the only one there who didn't have an MBA. I was the only one there who had not devoted their entire life to understanding finance, right? I was the fishing guide, and I was Bill's project, and I walked around with a legal pad and wrote down words that I didn't know, right? Like, I don't know what they're talking about. And then I stayed up all night, and I taught myself finance. And that was my first 6 months, was brutal, right? I didn't know anything. I had no value. I was just in the way.
Hiding in the bathroom stall.
Just like sitting there as a sponge, being like, man, like just another planet. But at the same time, man, I'm one of these guys. I mean, when I get into something, I get in, and I don't like not being good. right? I'm competitive, right? I have that personality. I want to win. And so, I put a lot of time in. And New York is great, man. Also, to be in your late 20s and single in New York, man, that was a good place to be. And I had a great time. And Bill is a great person, and I learned an incredible amount. And I ultimately spent just over 2 years in New York. And it was one of the most important things I've ever done. Not just from an intellectual capacity, because I learned so much and really developed all of the business acumen that I use today to run my own business. And the more important component of all of it is learning how to raise capital. The idea prior to going to New York of building and buying a fishing lodge, which is millions of dollars, was just unfathomable, right? I didn't and don't have that money, right? I mean, I can't just go and do that. But what I learned there was this ability to go to people that do have that type of money and give them an idea in a way that they want to be part of it, where that I can then be part of it and that I can own part of it because I'm the guy that has the idea.
So then ultimately you realized it wasn't for you. How long did you last up there?
So I spent, 2 years working for Bill, and kind of the transition was more.
That's a stretch.
Yeah. I mean, it was real.
For being lost.
Yeah. And I was lost. There's no doubt about it. And to find out that I was lost was probably the more interesting part of it, because I didn't know I was lost. This was never meant to be a full-time job when Bill kind of plucked me and put me in this space. It was always meant to be a transition. And all of a sudden it had been 2 years. And Bill called me in his office. He said, "Listen, you're doing great. I want you to go to business school." I'm like, "Awesome." He's like, "All right. So I want you to apply to Harvard." And he's like, "And I'll keep paying you. We'll pay for school. I want you to go. Then you come back."
Far out.
Right. So that was the transition. I was like,
this guy catch a 30-pound brown in Tierra del Fuego? Like,
yeah. I mean,
what lit him up on you?
He's that type of guy, man. And he's notorious for kind of plucking people out of weird places as he finds them. And so I honestly started writing my application to go to Harvard. And that was the first time that I was able to kind of step back and be a little introspective and reflective since I've been in New York, right? Because of my personality, because I was so overwhelmed, I was very tunnel vision, man. I was very focused, man. I had blinders on, and I had, I was doing this, right? And I never got out of the trenches to look to see what was going on around me. And for Harvard or any of these business schools, what I would say now is one of the more important parts of that process is the application process. Ask you to ask yourself, where do you want to be in the world, and why do you want to do this to get there? And so,
let me ask you one other question. Were you like dining in the most fabulous restaurants and like living the life, or were you locked away in a small apartment trying to figure out what the shit was all about?
It was a mix, right?
You had some relief. And,
I mean, look,
you saw where it could get you. You were engaged with a higher class of
there's no doubt, man. I was living exposed to the world of the 1%, living in a 7th floor walk up.
Did you want that?
You want part of it, right?
Yeah.
Even still, I want part of that.
Yeah, we'd lie to ourselves if we said we didn't.
I mean, part of that I wanted, and
everything's a trade-off.
Life is a trade,
Mm-hmm.
But I stepped back, and I wrote my application, and I took it to Bill's office, and I said, "I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I mean, I love what I'm doing, and which is true. And I loved the experience, and I was appreciative of it, and probably not appreciative enough because I didn't understand how special it was. And like many things in life, you never understand.
You tried to, I imagine.
I don't know that I was capable of. I think oftentimes
is how you reach to really.
You have to be further enough distance to be able to look back and really understand how important it was at the time.
Yeah.
Right. And at the moment, man, there's just too much going on. I wasn't capable. Maybe someone better than me is. And it's partly, we talked earlier about
at that.
Yeah, of why, why that experience, is so important to me. Because I didn't understand it or appreciate it at the time, and probably didn't offer my appreciation enough, right, to realize how special that was, and to understand that it was this incredible gift that I'd been given to have this experience that was just so unobtainable, for someone who came from where I came from and knew what I knew, right? I mean, I had no business being there. He could have hired anybody in the world. I mean, at this stage, man, Pershing Square was the place to be. Bill Ackman was the person to work for.
Baby Buffett.
Yeah. I mean, all of that was very true and still is true. But man, I was out of my league and very fortunate to be there and probably didn't realize it enough at the time. And between Bill and really two other guys at the firm, right? There's a guy named Paul Hillel, who was a college friend of Bill's, and another guy named Mick McGuire. And really Bill was off doing, big hitter things. So it was really the two of those guys that took me under their wing and helped me navigate this world, and forever indebted to both of them, right? They've had an incredible impact on my education and growth as a human. And both of those guys have left now and run their own funds and have remained really close friends. And Bill has remained a really close friend. But after all of that, I go back to Bill's office, and the conclusion I had drawn was, man, I love what I'm doing. And the idea of going to Harvard or any crazy school like that is so cool that I was like, man, that would be awesome.
You're out of your skin.
Yeah. I was like, but man, if I'm honest with myself, when I look up, I don't want to be 50 and be this incredibly wealthy person, which was the path that was on, but also be this, for me at least. This is also all to keep in mind, man. This was me and my abilities playing in this world I was in. Was for me to be successful there, it was a very one-dimensional life, right? You had to be fully devoted to this one thing. And for me to have any ability to be successful at all, man, that was it, man. I didn't read fiction. I didn't do anything, man. I read this and I read and worked, and that was the path. And I watched guys around me, wake up later in life with all this money and then try to find out who they are. And I decided I valued that time too much, and I wanted to go do something, even if it meant less financial success, but I wanted to live a more examined life. And that was really as far of a conclusion as I had made, and a testament to who Bill Ackman is. His immediate response was, okay, that's great. So what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know what that means. I was like, I stopped there, and he continued to push you to be a better person. And he's like, all right, well, now you know how to value businesses. He's like, so go find a business in this world of fishing that you want to be in. And so, man, I went out in the world and I looked at every fishing business that was for sale. And from rod manufacturers to clothing manufacturers to fly companies. And honestly, they were all just terrible businesses, right? I mean, these are all things that people own to be
Luckily,
toys.
you learned to evaluate that through the process of learning finance.
And, because when people have made money, they come back to the things they're passionate about and they spend their money there. And that's a big part of what this industry is. And honestly, I read there was an ad in the Wall Street Journal for a fishing lodge in Alaska that was for sale.
Does he need another pet project? Can you send him my way?
We could come up with a new one. And so I flew to Alaska to go look at this lodge. And I was like, man, this is the industry, right? This is interesting. The downside there was it was in Alaska. So you're only open for 100 days a year. You had all these airplanes. So you had all these incredible assets that depreciated and required all this maintenance. And you're closed most of the year. So then I started growing the reach. And then I started, I settled in the Bahamas. I'd spent a lot of time in the Bahamas already. I already loved the Bahamas. The fishing was great. You can fish for 8 or 9 months of the year.
Barefoot.
Yeah. Weather's great.
Being barefoot is my only goal in life.
I'm barefoot now. And
wait, let me kick my flip-flops off. Me too.
And so I found a piece of dirt in the Bahamas, and I did. I put up everything I had, and Bill backstopped it. He's my only investor. And as I've done a couple other small little projects, he just recently reprimanded me for not including him. So he recently, we just had breakfast a couple weeks ago, and he's like, listen, everything you do, I want to be part of. And
you were invited by the Prince of Burma.
Bhutan, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Forgive me. I get lost in everywhere you've been.
Yeah.
The Prince of Bhutan invited you to come over. Why? How did he find you? What?
It goes back to this Indie Fly project in Guyana, right, where we truly went and helped create an economy in an altruistic mean with the idea that if the community benefited, then the resource could be protected.
He became aware of that on his own.
On his own. The prince happens to be an angler, and they are looking to grow tourism in Bhutan, and kind of through, some intermediaries, they reached out and said, listen, sport fishing or fishing of any kind, actually.
They're gorgeous people.
Oh yeah, Bhutan's an incredible,
it's like
incredible
staring
place.
into the sun.
Yeah, it's the country that measures gross national happiness instead of gross domestic product. And so it's an interesting place, and they're looking to grow tourism, particularly sustainable tourism and ecotourism, and fishing is illegal there, and it's culturally taboo, right? This is a Buddhist nation, so the idea of hurting another creature is just not allowed. But the royal family does currently and has historically always fished. So all the fish in the country belong to the royal family. And the royal family has chased these golden mahseer, for several of them. I mean, several of the, they're on their fifth king now, and many of them have fished. And they had this idea of, is there an opportunity for particularly fly fishing, 100% catch and release, sport fishing as a method of conservation and a reason for economic stimulus in a country that's looking to grow. And, that very much coincides with the Indie Fly model and our mantra there. And
can we back up and get you to explain the formation of Indie Fly, when that happened and what it means?
Absolutely. So Indie Fly is a 501c3 that I helped co-found with Al Perkinson, who at the time was with Costa Sunglasses and is now with Sims Fishing. And it really is a result of our experience in Guyana. So we went down to Guyana in 2011 to really just go explore, right? I mean, in its basis form, like it was the idea of going to catch this big, giant, uncatchable fish on a fly rod, and I'm in for those adventures at any time. And we went down there and had success in the fishing, but more importantly, really became enamored with the people, right? And, as a capitalist, as an entrepreneur, I saw an opportunity to add some value down there, and I thought there was an economic opportunity to bring paying anglers down there to catch this fish. And for whatever reason, it wasn't anything other than just happenstance of where we were and liking the people. It was, they need to do it themselves, right? I didn't want to go down there as an investor and build a business. I wanted them to do it. I wanted them to make the money. This year, man, the fly fishing is going to dump 120 grand into the economy, right? That's real wealth generation on a relative basis. And with that is a lot of negativity.
Can you work on that simultaneously?
And we do.
Can you deliver a case of YETI canteens to them so they're not shipping in bottles of water?
Yeah, we're actually working on the kick plastic there right now. And
why not start there, right?
Well, the hard part, honestly, there isn't for the locals because they just drink out of the river.
Right.
But it's trying to get the consumer, who has spent a lot of money to come fishing, to drink water in the jungle that you're promising is safe, right? It's really breaking the American mindset is the challenge.
Yeah.
The locals are all about it.
You just had a beautiful baby boy.
Yeah.
With Beth, who I was fortunate to meet, little Huckleberry, right?
That's right.
Can you tell me about that experience? Remind me what it's like when they're first born. I have a 3 and a 6-year-old in my life. It's changed for the better.
It certainly has been a remarkable change for the better. Which was also very unknowable. I mean, even into labor, I was just like, man, this was a big mistake, right? I was like, well, I don't know what path we're on, but I'm not so sure about this.
Shit.
It's really terrifying, particularly when you live the life I live. I mean, I was in 16 countries last year. I'm on the road all the time. I mean, that's the nature of what I do. I'm incredibly lucky to have someone like Beth who understands what I do and who I am and how much of me that is, and that it's not that it's just a job or any of those things, man. It truly is just part of who I am, right? I mean, I have to go, right? I mean, she doesn't want me around if I'm not doing these things because I'm not the same person, and she's incredibly supportive of that and understanding, which in alone is quite a miracle. And then to add to that, a new human being that we are collectively responsible for is quite an adventure. And we're early in the game.
Pretty soon he's going to crawl out of bed and come to yours and say, "Good morning, Daddy."
Yeah.
Get ready for that to rock your senses.
And But it very quickly reprioritizes what's important in the world. And I don't even know what I would have told you 6 months ago if you told me what the most important things in life are. But now there's a very clear number one, which is, to be the best father I can be, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal now. And that's a new one, which even...
I try not to screw that up on a daily basis.
Yeah. And, but that's the meaning, right? That's the path forward now. And so how do I do that and still do all these other things?
Like you could put roots down, like this all came to this and your kid came at the right time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly, Indy Fly is
this is well beyond guiding an individual.
Yeah. It's my favorite thing I do. And my career aspirations at this point would be able to grow Indy Fly to a degree where it is a sustainable nonprofit, where that is where I can fully devote my time. I mean, right now we have one employee. We have an executive director that we couldn't do without, who, he does all the heavy lifting. We throw him ideas, we tell him what we want to do, we find volunteers, we help execute, but he sits there and manages the whole process and makes it happen. And, I get to do all the fun part of it. But as we continue to grow, we just had a really successful fundraiser here in Texas last weekend in Houston, and have a couple more scheduled. And as we keep raising money and getting to redeploy that money and doing good in the world, I would hope that in 5 years, man, Indy Fly is more than just a passion for me, and really where I get to put all my time and energy. So.
Jeez Louise, brother. It's so cool to be with you and to have sort of learned what you're doing and give it greater perspective to the grind of fishing the same place on a daily basis.
Oh, there's value
positive
there.
In that, right?
I want to spend my time fishing with guys that are in the same place. So, yeah.
No, I love it. It's not the absolute end to the means for me, but it's what I'm meant to do at this time, and I love every second of it. I'm in your old O2 Waterman that you didn't have time to sort of pick up and put to use. And as it turns out, I kind of saved it from Irma. Yeah. Just in time to put it in Harvey's wake.
But it dodged that one too, right?
Like Doug, who delivers boats for Hal Chittum, showed up on Thursday in Rockport as I was boarding up the windows. And I had the Chittum and the Waterman there at that time. I had to call in like 3 friends to haul off surf skis and wooden boats and both skiffs and get the hell out of Dodge. We made it out Friday morning safe and secure to have Harvey rip the house apart Friday night. So
dodging bullets. But that's a wonderful boat, man. I couldn't, like, I had it and I'd honestly never even used it. Like, it was just one of these.
It's kind of the archetype that exists in the sky, right? That nothing else compared to it will ever be perfect.
It's minimalist, it's perfect, and it needs to be in someone's hands like yours, who's going to use it like it needs to be.
I got a fishy out of it. It's got a 50 Tohatsu, which was controversial. It's not rated for that. It's perfect.
Yeah. It doesn't ride stern low? Not stern heavy?
Not with the fatzos I take out. No, just kidding. It's as shallow as any boat I've been in, and it's super lightweight to pull all day. Yeah. And the 50 gets you there at 3/4 throttle or half without having to redline a 25 or a 40 all the whole
way. So, absolutely.
It's working great. I hope you get to see it. It's still in pristine shape the way. And I knew the type of guy you were from how that transaction went, right? Yeah. You said, I want you to have it. I sent you 20 grand. And it eventually showed up. Yeah. Painless.
That's it.
And like I said, man, it's been a pleasure knowing you. You're an inspiration to the lifestyle of fishing. I refuse to call it a sport. But thanks a lot for coming and talking to me.
Thanks for having me. It's always, it's always uncomfortable, with the labels and things, and in its simplest form. And I'm just the luckiest person I know, right? I mean, if I had Bill Ackman's money, I would do what I do now, right? I would just ride in his plane. Yeah. So, that's a pretty privileged place to be there. And not many people in the world can say that, right? That, I mean, yeah, there's parts that are still a job, man, but man, it's a pretty unbelievable life that I live, and very, very fortunate to be able to do it and share it with other people. And I get to interact with some of the most dynamic and interesting people in the world, man. And this is a good example of that. And ultimately, the people that you meet along the way are what make this journey so interesting. And fishing is a great filter for that, to just meet great people.
All the luck in the world for Indie Fly. I'll be backing it. Keep an eye on that.
Cool.
And I hope I get to go somewhere with you someday.
Let's do it soon.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Oliver. Thanks again for listening to Drifting, presented by YETI and hosted by me, JT Van Zandt. To listen to more episodes, visit yeti.com or search Drifting on iTunes.